got a really exciting video on something that I'm very proud about, and I'm also a bit bewildered that I'm sat in a place where I felt so far out of reach for all my life. And a little hint about what I'm going to speak about is relating to the video I did about 7 months ago that nearly hit 100,000 views, which was about my heart, about my internal suffering that I've had since a child. And I'm sat here today as somebody that's actually found a way through it. I actually find it really exciting and really fascinating. And the topic of psychology and human beings and why we are the way we are and why we suffer the way we do is probably the most fascinating subject I've ever got my claws on in my entire life. I've read so many books in so many different perspectives on this subject, whether it's Ram Dass in a spiritual way, Michael Singer, Pete Walker over complex PTSD, Gabor Mate on addiction and why we suffer and the psychology of what happens to us as children. I've literally been consuming all this content trying to help myself understand why it is that I've suffered to the extent I have. Why has it been such a problem? Why have I been in hospital numerous times where my body is collapsing? Why am I had episodes of pissing blood? Why have I had fibromyalgia? Why have I had all these struggles to barely get up off my feet? And why is it happening to so many people? Why are people out there unable to live their life? It fascinates me, and I just wanted to know. I wanted to know for myself, for my own life, my own relationships, for my child. I wanted to know. For my whole life, I thought I was okay because I numbed myself out completely. I disassociated. I didn't actually live in my body. I ignored everything that was going on inside to survive my experience with my mum and the schizophrenia and everything, and it just was hell on earth, right? So my coping strategy was to completely disassociate. And I got to that point where I made that video, which was 35. Why is it taking me 35 years to understand why I've suffered so much internally, which got a lot of views. And it struck a chord with many people because I don't know a single person that I know on a friendly basis or an intimate basis that doesn't struggle with this. You know, they might not have chronic illness conditions, but they are struggling in one way or another. They are suffering, okay? And I find it so fascinating that what is it at the core of us as human beings that causes us this suffering to a lesser or greater extent. And I knew that if I understood this for myself, like I have done with other subjects when it comes to health, I will be able to help other people immensely. You know, this more than anything else I've ever learned. But what I realized is that I wasn't broken. It wasn't me. It was a condition created from my childhood. Okay, I was frozen in a survival mechanism because of my experiences. And Pete Walker's book is incredible, right? It really was one of the major turning points in my journey of understanding this, that I was struggling with complex PTSD where my body never, ever, ever felt safe, okay? And what that does on a physiological level to our bodies does more than any, pizza or bad diet. It destroys us over time. The chronic stress destroys us more than anything. And to understand that cycle and to understand what we can do to get out of that would provide so much more benefit to people that are struggling with a chronic illness than telling them you need to change your diet, which doesn't hurt. I never say it hurts to do the right thing, but this is at the core of why people are struggling. About a year ago, a big catalyst for me was that my mum had destroyed her house. A water main had burst in the house, and because she's on a different planet psychologically, she waded through water for 2 or 3 months. She was sectioned, the house was ridden with black mold everywhere, she couldn't live there, and she phoned me after she was released from sectioning. Actually the hospital did, and they said, we need you to come and collect your mother. And in my trauma response, in my guilty response, in my groomed surrogate husband response, in all the dysfunctional responses I had, I fell into the train routing in my brain that always was, I need to look after her, I need to put her first, I need to forget anything I'm going through, even though I have a child, even though I've got work commitments, even though I've got all these things, I need to go and protect her and look after her, right? Even though she doesn't do it the other way around. And what I did is I drove her 4 hours up to where I lived, and she came and stayed, and she started to dismantle me, and what she was quite happy for me to implode, to become ill, to destroy my life, to never see my child again. She wanted to have me back as her piece of, she owned me. She wanted to claw me back. The fact that I had tried to escape her clutches was irrehensible to her, that I didn't know my place. You know, this is what narcissists do. They cannot see anything but themselves. And she isn't just she's got traits of narcissism. It's a full-blown case study of every aspect of narcissism, all bundled in one, mixed with schizophrenia. So it's a beautiful combination. And she came to destroy my life. And I had to go and get her out of our family home after 2 days because it was so intense. And she started to do the work. She started to crumble me down. My boundaries were fading. The strength that I thought I had was dissolving. Her presence triggered all those responses that had me chronically bedbound, fibromyalgia, POTS, all these different problems I had, neurological problems, shaking, tremors, everything that I'd lived with in my house for 7 to 8 years of not going out and suffering so immensely. Slowly but surely things started creeping up. My nervous system was going back into the response it had always been in. And it hit me like a ton of bricks. That it's not like I changed my diet during that time. It's that the chronic stress that woman had put on my nervous system, the way she had molded me, was the reason why I had struggled with my health for so long. And when she went away, it started to click, it started to make sense. All the media I was consuming, these amazing people like Gabor Mate, it all started to make sense. I started to realize I was a product of my upbringing. I was hollow because my upbringing was hollow. I was in pain because I was never listened to, right? It was never about me. Ever, ever, ever was it about me. And it all started to make sense that I'm not broken. Who I am as a person is not broken. My upbringing was not meeting my needs. And actually, it was doing the opposite. It was psychologically unraveling me from an early age. What I started to understand was that understanding doesn't mean healing. Understanding doesn't mean that everything's going to go away and it's going to be okay. I started to allow myself to feel how I felt about the situation. And it was the start of chaos. It was the start of the floodgates opening when I put my hand on my heart and I said, I want to know, James, I want to know what you've been through. I want to feel what I've always hid away for survival. I want to know it all. I want to heal. I want to move forward. I want to be free of this past. I don't want to live with the chains of what I was subjected to. And I meant it. I had full intention that no matter how painful it was, I wanted to feel all of it. And what proceeded to happen for the following months was chaos. I was erratic, I was bipolar, I just couldn't settle. All these feelings that would overflow my body, I would breathe into them, I would allow them, I'd accept them, I'd understand why they're there, and I'd get relief. And then it would come back. It was just over and over again, like the waves on a beach just hitting me over and over again, and it was eroding my, what would the word be, my my stamina, I guess, to withstand this. It was horrible. I was going through it all. And I didn't know when it would end. I had a family. I'd left my job. I was living off savings. All these fears were hitting me all at the same time, and it was all too much. So I was in this situation where I was accepting that emotionally the place that I've come from and grown up in was desolate, and I had a mum that would see me on dialysis if it meant she could have me back. She didn't care for me or my family or me moving on. She wanted to destroy me, and the reality was hard to stomach. And then, like I said before, we were living off savings. I was trying to find another job, and I was struggling emotionally. I was allowing myself to feel how I felt, but it had repercussions in my stability for my home and my family. And the only thing I had was faith. Why would my body be giving all these, since I've opened myself to feeling how I truly feel about my life and what I've been through, why would this lead to a bad place to just allow myself to feel? And all I had was faith, faith that it wouldn't last forever, and that to go back to just putting it all away and using things to escape was just not where I wanted to be. It wasn't my future. But eventually it got the better of me, because I got hit by a virus so hard at a time when I was so weak emotionally, and I felt like part of me just wanted to give up. I was just like, the reality of, the people that bring you into this planet doing stuff like that to you, it just hurt a lot, and I was in a place where I just wanted to give up. I just wanted to give up, and I got hit by this virus, and I hadn't pissed for 2 days, and I knew something wasn't right. And I went to get checked up at A&E, and they hospitalised me for 5 days. My kidneys went to 30%, 34 GFR. My white blood cell count was so dangerously low, they didn't want to let me go because they thought I could die if another thing hit me. And I was sat in the hospital bed with a catheter out my you-know-what, and I had diarrhea every half an hour, and I just couldn't keep fluids down, and I just sat there, and it all dawned on me. It dawned on me. My body is connected to my emotional state. The hurt that I feel, the abandonment that I feel, the reality of my life that I've tried to get away from and pretend that's not there, has actually hurt me very deeply. And I breathe into it. I still allow myself to feel like that. I was in hospital, had a few months left of savings, and my partner and my child were looking to me to, be the provider of the household. And the pressure was so much. And there was also the other aspect, I've been on YouTube for 10 years, and here I am in hospital where a virus has struck me down so hard that I've got a kidney injury and I can't do anything. I had such severe dehydration from not being able to take fluids that my heels were cracking, and I hurt to walk, and I'm here, and I'm supposed to be someone that is someone that tries to help people with their health, and everything hit me, and it was so difficult. And I was breathing through it, and I was just allowing myself to be in that moment. But what I realised is that this was the reality of my inner life since I was a child. I lived in fear of being abandoned, and the thing is that I had no emotional connection growing up. I disassociated the whole time, and I grew up with a mum that was really unwell, and to survive, I entwined myself. As a kid, you what do you know? But It's all you know, isn't it, when you grow up with your parents? But my mum had schizophrenia, and I entwined myself in the reality of a schizophrenic to survive. What does that do to a child? And I speak about this in my course, but a lot of times we become so numb to our own pain and what we've been through that we forget how we feel about things. And I pictured just for a minute what I've been through and my son being in that situation, and it broke me instantly. I started to understand how I felt. It's no reason I've struggled to the extent I have, because I've been through psychological hell. And I started to really acknowledge and accept, wow, if my son was going through that and he had addictions and he had problems, I'd be like, no fucking wonder. And I started to realize that I had no foundation. I struggled because of all of the above. And I think sometimes it's good to get rid of that facade that I'm okay, I'm fit, I'm healthy, I'm lean, I'm all these different things. I don't need anyone, I'm okay on my own. It was a facade built on a rotten foundation. And in that hospital bed, I just allowed myself to be where I was, accepting the truth, accepting reality. And it freed me. It freed me to start again. But I stopped fighting the truth. I stopped fighting what my life was. And I started allowing myself just to feel how I felt about my life. And it was chaos. It was chaos for, like 6 months of just pure chaos. Never knowing when it was going to end. My partner worrying like, when does this end? I need some stability. I have a kid, But she stuck it through with me. And I just allowed myself to be, and I breathed through it. And I allowed my body to feel what it was going to feel whenever it came up. There were times when I judged it and I didn't want it to be there. But I knew that ultimately I have to get back to myself. I have to get back to me. And one day, I was just in a meditation, and understanding what I do now about those formative years of a child. What must it do to a child to be inside the womb of somebody with severe problems? The child knows all of it that's going on. Imagine the vulnerability of somebody that can do nothing for themselves and being subjected to what goes on inside. And if you really meditate on that and have some compassion for yourself, you'll understand, wow, it's a miracle that I'm still standing, right? And I was meditating, and I started to feel compassion and forgiveness for my parent. I started to understand they're just a symptom of their upbringing and their trauma. I always think it's very important to say that as somebody that's been through a lot at the hands of a narcissist, it's always important that you acknowledge yourself first and foremost. Sometimes we have a tendency to acknowledge them first. Oh, they've been through a lot. But we need to acknowledge ourselves first and foremost. And then we can worry about them. I've had to cut my mum off for my own sanity. She'll never learn. She'll never want to know me. I'd rather rot than affect my child like she has done with me. But I still forgive her. And I felt that forgiveness flood my body, and I felt such a shift in my heart. It felt like a corkscrew was being removed from my heart, and I winced and I cried and I felt it all. And since that day, I've been a different person. I no longer feel hollowness in my heart that I've carried since a child. I don't no longer feel like I am trapped in a cage inside myself. And it all started with healing and feeling my feelings, allowing it to be. And for the longest time, my whole life, I felt hollow, and there would only be brief moments where I felt like I felt love, but it was so fleeting. My normal state was to feel hollow in my heart. I felt it all the time, like it was just ice. And in the process of this year, allowing myself to feel the reality of my situation, allowing myself to move on, it's like my heart has thawed. And it's been so profound for me, more than anything I've ever done. And all those hard times of wondering whether I am too much for my family, I need to be on my own, I need to run away, all these difficult situations, wondering whether I'm going to get a job, living off savings, all these, the whole everything, the shebang, everything that I've been through. The fact that it's led to this place where I never thought I'd get there makes it so sweet. Makes it so worth it. And I don't think I've ever felt as strongly as I have about anything than what I'm talking about now. What I think is interesting to say is that the thing that came to my mind when I felt the forgiveness for my parents and my mum specifically is that I imagined their eyes and their faces and their whatever's happened to them, and I felt that forgiveness overrun in my body, and I felt the pain simultaneously moving from my heart. Is that what came to my mind over and over again was, they know not what they do. And I'm not a religious person, but these things, there's been other times where in my journey through this, and my journey with healing my body, 13 years ago, there are relations to God or Jesus or whatever you want to call them. My journey started with a pray. I was rock bottom in that house where I hadn't left for 7-8 years, and my own reality was just with a schizophrenic. And it started with a pray. I had nothing to give. And the situation opened up for me to heal. And here I was healing my heart. And the thing that came to my mind was, they know not what they do. 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 And simultaneously, I feel my heart releasing. That's the update. That's what I've been doing this year. And I've released the course, and people have given me such amazing feedback that it's just spurred me on even more to carry on this journey. But I feel like I'm at the precipice of the blooming of my entire life, to help people, to give the most value. And when this happened to me a couple of months ago and I felt my heart change, I felt this shift, I felt an emotional change where I was starting to feel free of my past, free of my trauma, stopping the generational trauma. I was like, oh my God, like, as hard as it's been, I feel like I'm sat on gold. I will be able to help so many people with this, and I can't wait. So I've got my course, I've released it, and I'm working on that final module now that blueprints all of this. Whether it's depression, anxiety, chronic health conditions, going to the core of why you as a person, no matter how painful it is, going to the core and exposing it and feeling it and breathing it and moving past it to bring yourself the life you deserve. You know, at the end of the day, you are just a product of what you've been through. Your consciousness has entered this body at a young age to complete vulnerability to those around you, and you've adapted to survive, and it's created the life that you've lived. But it's not you. It's your adaptation to survive. And healing is when we can return to who we were if this had never happened. And I just speechless. It's so profound and so exciting and so interesting, so amazing. I just can't wait to share all of it.